Hello and welcome to Faithfully Stampin' with Jennifer Helm. I am Jennifer Helm, the Faithful Stamper and independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up! Today I have for you a simple triangle box. This is a sweet little box, great for any occasion. Halloween is coming, so I opted for Halloween theme tonight, but I'll show you an idea for another holiday. This is a design inspired by Catherine with In the Pink Designs. And it's super simple. You need one piece of cardstock and 4 pieces of designer series paper, and that's all the supplies you need to make this box, with a little glue and dimensionals as well. But come along and craft with me and I'll show you how to make it. So to start, you will need a piece of cardstock that is 10 inches wide by 7.5 inches tall. So this is already trimmed down to size, so it's just slightly smaller than a full sheet of cardstock. And you will need a scoring tool. It can either be our paper trimmer scorer, or I'm going to use my scoreboard tonight. I apologize for the glare here. So we're going to start with the 10-inch side of the paper. So I'm going to snug that up against the top of my board. It's got a ruler here for measurements. And I'm going to take my stylus and score first at 2.5, then at 5, and then 7.5. So 2.5, 5, and 7.5. Now turn your paper so that 7.5 inch side is at the top, and we're going to score at 2.5 and 5. And that is all the scoring that we need to do. So we've created a rectangle that's portioned into squares. So you've got 3 columns, 4 rows of squares, equal size. So grab a pair of scissors, and I'll show you how we're going to create the box. What we're going to do first is we're going to cut on the score lines from the bottom up to the top of the second box on both sides. So I find it best to try to trim on the inside of the score line as straight as possible, because these 2 flaps here are going to be the outer lid or front flap of the box, and then the back of the box. This is the little triangle lid we're forming here, so the straighter edges you have, the better. So I'm just going to take my scissors and trim as best I can up to that second score line, just up to it. And then I'm going to cut up on the second one as well. Gotta resituate here. There we go. Straight up to that second score line. Now you can, if you want, burnish your lines, fold your paper on the score line before you cut. I like to cut and then score, but there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's total personal preference, so whatever you like to do. I like my paper to just be kind of flatter when I'm trying to fool with it. So now we've created these 3 flaps here at the bottom. So what you're going to do on the bottom one here is we're going to cut the bottom square off and about 1/3 of the second one. So I just do it all at once. You don't need a ruler. You can get one if you want one, but I just eyeball. Now you could save these little squares for other projects because it's a nice chunk of cardstock there. Ooh, for a small die cut. Sorry. Loud noise made me jump. And now that I've cut my flaps, I'm going to just bevel the edges. So trim it at an angle from the bottom up to your score line there. These do not have to be perfect. We're simply removing a little cardstock, so when we go to fold the box, it's a little easier to assemble. Not so much cardstock to try to fold and keep looking nice. Now, so we've got this, we've created a skyscraper, so to speak. That's what it looks like almost. So this is the front of the box. Now we're going to create the bottom of the box. So we're going to do exactly the same thing that we just did, except instead of cutting up 2 boxes, we're only going to cut up 1, because obviously if you cut up 2, you're going to cut the sides of your box off. So same thing. Just cut up to the first score line this time. And then cut about 1/3 on each side off. Sometimes I flip my cardstock over. It's just easier to do it without having that in my way. And then bevel those edges. You'll see why when we assemble the box, why this is a little bit handy to have these corners notched in. I'm going to take a little more off that one. There we go. All right. So now we have this interesting little shape. I'm going to turn it sideways just for full view in camera here. So now I'm going to take my box and fold on my score lines and burnish them with my bone folder. Now you can do this with your fingers too if you don't have a bone folder. This just gives you nice crisp edges on your box, makes it go together a little bit easier. And then once you've folded all your edges, go ahead and open them back up, and I flip them so the box looks like this. Ooh, important step here. If you have a corner rounder, you can round your corners so the front panel on your box looks just a little bit cleaner, and I find it a lot easier to do this now as opposed to after I've glued the box together. I speak from experience. So the longer flap, the two boxes together, is the front of your box. So I'm going to go ahead and use my detailed trio punch to round my corners. And I'm going to remove a little fluff here. And I'm going to trim. I can tell, I don't know if you can see, I can see my score line here just a little bit. And while it doesn't look terrible, it's going to bother me. So probably going to make it worse. Just going to trim, there we go, a little bit extra off the box there. Now keep your corner rounder handy. You will need it again in a minute. But there we go. We've got our box with our flap rounded corners. Now you'll need some tear-in tape. I recommend tear-in tape for this step as opposed to liquid glue because I would not want to stand as long as it would take to hold the box together with liquid glue. So I will use liquid glue in a minute to put my Designer Series paper on the outside of the box. But for this step, I really recommend tear-in tape, which is sticking to my fingers horribly this evening. And you want two pieces, one up near the edge of your flaps and one down near the score line. This just really helps you make a solid box. So once you have all your pieces of tear-in tape, so you should have 8 pieces, 2 on each of the 4 flaps, I recommend either taking your bone folder and carefully going over, or even your fingers will do, just give that tape a nice burnish, because then when you go to assemble the box, the backing comes off a lot easier. So we're going to work on half the box at a time. And you can decorate the box at this point if you like, or I'm going to show you, I think it'll just be better visually to assemble the box and then show you how the pieces go. But if you're making an assembly line of these for a baby shower or coworker gifts or something like that, it might be easier to put the decorations on now. So, probably should have started on the other flap, but that's okay. It doesn't really matter. So, and I'm using my Take Your Pick tool to lift the tape off. I just find it easier than me trying to catch it with my fingernails. So what you're going to do is work one side of the box at a time, and you're going to fold the flaps in so that this square score line measures up to the straight edge of your box. And then just hold the corners together. Now, if you're using liquid glue, you will have to hold it for an extra few seconds, maybe a minute, to get it to stay. And I don't know about you, but I'm not patient enough for that. So there's one half of the box. Now we're just going to repeat with the other side of the box. So go ahead and remove that tear and tape on this side of the box. Both flaps. Now you will have to be slightly careful when you fold the second flap in, and I'll show you why. So same thing, we're going to line up our straight edges, but before I do that, I'm going to take my bottom flap here, since I'm working with the top. I'm just going to fold it backwards because otherwise it's going to stick somewhere I don't want it to stick. So just get that out of your way for a second. So again, match up your straight edges. And this is much easier to do if you're not trying to line it up for camera. Now, you can see I pulled this flap out of the way because otherwise I was definitely going to get it stuck to the back of the box. So now I just have to gently pull open the box, tuck the flap in, and then I'm ready to go ahead and line up that last piece of the box. Give it a little press. You can put it down on the table and kind of just give it a little press with your fingers on both sides. And then we have our little box created. Now, obviously, this box isn't going to seal this way, but we're going to create a little triangle with it. And to do that, we are going to press in on the middle of the sides of the box and down towards the bottom. Just pinch gently and squeeze in the front of the box. It naturally creates the triangle effect on the side. And then when you close the box, you have this sweet little triangle shape. So we're going to decorate this and then I'll show you how to seal it. Now for decoration, you need some designer series paper. 4 squares that are 2 1/4 inches. Now I'm using 2 and 2. You could use 4 of the same. It's totally up to you. What I recommend is if you're using 2 and 2 like I am, figure out which is the front and which is the inside of the box. First of all, for the front, I'm going to use my little skull and Halloween assortment here. One of the pieces I'm going to move to the side and not do anything with. I'm going to keep it square. This other one is going to be the front of my box. And since I rounded the corners on the front of the box, I want to round the corners on this piece of paper. And that's why I recommend, at least for your first box, putting it together and then decorating it, because you can see which direction you need to do your corner rounding. So I want to round these 2 bottom corners. And then I can set that aside. Now, the other 2 pieces are going to go on the inside of the box. So it doesn't really matter for this paper. If you have a directional paper, you need to be a little more careful, but I'm going to round the top 2 corners on this page, piece of designer series paper, and 2 corners on the other. And honestly, it doesn't matter whether I do top or bottom as long as I do 2. So there's 1. This is going to fit right here. And then I'm going to round the corners on this other one, because if I were to just glue this paper here like so, when I close the box, my little corners would show. So I want to get rid of those little corners so that they're not visible. So 1 you leave square, the other 3 you're going to round the corners. Now I recommend liquid glue, although you could use a tape runner for this next step. But I like having the flexibility to move my paper if I don't quite get it lined up correctly. So I'm going to use my liquid glue. This is our Tombow liquid glue, or green glue, some people call it. And I love it because you don't need a lot, and you can put the tip of the glue, and there's a narrow tip and a broad tip, which is great for your different projects. You can put it right on the paper and get a really thin line of glue. And you don't want this swimming in glue. You just want enough that your papers are going to stick. All right, and I did that all 4 at once to move along a little quicker. So, the first thing I'm going to do is put on the front cover of the box. So I'm just going to press that down. Since I don't have a whole lot of glue, it's going to stick pretty quick. Now I'm going to flip the box around, and I'm going to take that square that I didn't round any of the corner pieces and apply this to the back of the box. And you can kind of put your hand inside the box just to help steady it a little bit. Next, I'm going to grab these other two pieces that I rounded the corners on. One goes inside the lid, like so. And then that other one goes on the front of the box with the rounded corners at the bottom. And I recommend putting this one a little more towards the top. You don't have to put it right at the top, but that way you won't accidentally have anything showing below the front of your flap. So now that I've got all four pieces glued on, I'm going to let this sit for a minute and do my decorations for the front of the box, and then we'll come back and finish it off. So to create this front of the box, I need to do one little bit of stamping and then a little bit of punching. First of all, I have some basic black, and I'm going to cut a scallop oval from our double oval punch. And you can decorate these boxes any way you like. There's a lot of flexibility that you have here. And I decided to make a cute little pumpkin. So since I'm using a photopolymer stamp set, I need a little bit of a cushion, so that's what my foam piece is for. I'm just going to ink up my pumpkin outline with Memento black ink. And then I can't have a pumpkin without a cute little jack-o'-lantern face. And so there is my cute little pumpkin. And now that I have him all ready to go, I'm going to punch him out. And let's see, I should have paid a little more attention to where or what direction I stamped him, but that's okay. When you have a punch like this where you have multiple punches, you have to be careful sometimes which direction you punch in and how closely you punch them together, because otherwise, sometimes if you punch multiple images, you'll accidentally cut some of them off without meaning to. But since I'm only doing the one, I'm just going to line him up and punch. Get rid of my scraps here. Excuse me. Now, to finish off my box, I kept this one very simple. First of all, we're going to put our treats inside. These boxes will hold 8 to 10 Hershey Kisses. I will not go any more than 10 because it's deceiving. You look like you have plenty of room in the box, but when you jiggle them a little and pinch the box shut, you lose some of the room for your filler. And sometimes, like this one, doesn't want to cooperate quite the best. There we go. So no more than 10 Hershey Kisses. Catherine recommended 8. I squeezed 10 in because I like chocolate. Now, there's 2 ways you can seal these boxes. And I'm going to show you the first way, and then I'll show you a sample with the second way. What I'm going to do is use some twine, and I'm going to double wrap this. So there's my double wrap, and then I'm going to kind of budget for a bow and cut some twine off. And then I'm going to resituate this. So this is the trickiest thing you will do, is try to tie this shut and hold the box closed at the same time. If you happen to have a helper with an extra finger to help you with your ribbon, it goes a little easier. Or you can, there we go, opt for the second option I'm going to show you. So I've got my box nicely shut. I'm going to tie this twine together here at the top. You can use ribbon as well. I'll show you some different samples with some different ideas. And whoop. So there I've got my little bow, and I'm just going to trim my extra edges. Now, for the 2 punches that I have, I don't want to put my dimensionals in the middle so that they're laying on top of my twine. So I'm going to take my dimensionals. You can use, I could use large or small ones here. but depending on what shape you use, you might want to use mini ones and leave room for your ribbon in the middle if you're going to do this version of the box. So then I'm going to put it over top of the ribbon. And this way, if you're giving this to someone and your recipient wants to retie the box, they would have to thread the ribbon through, only because I doubled it up, but they could still have a functional treat box. Now I'm going to add some dimensionals to my little pumpkin and put him on the front. And now I have a perfectly sweet little Halloween box ready to go. Now the second way that you can put this box together, if you don't want to fool so much with tying the bow around the front, you can use a Velcro dot. So here is a second version. The box is the same, but instead of tying ribbon around the whole box, I put a Velcro dot underneath the lid, other half down here at the bottom, and I tied my ribbon around my flap so that it sits at the top of the box up here, and then the box is easier to open, just Velcro dot. So you can do either style to open your box, totally up to you. So there are 2 of our Halloween boxes. I did do one more just to show you how you can decorate differently. Like this one, I did my little scallop circle with my ghost punched out and then treat yourself across the front. This one, I used the Spooky Witch, and I put a knot in my ribbon at the top. I did not tie a bow, and I could, if I wanted to get a little fancy, I could trim these edges a little bit more and then take my twine and wrap a bow around the other direction and tie it. So it's really up to you how fancy you want to get and how you want to close your box. I used a little wink of Stella and some sequins to give my box some shimmer. And then these boxes are great for any occasion. So you could definitely make them for Christmas, baby showers, bridal showers, anything like that. Even you could do a fall themed one with pumpkins and leaves for Thanksgiving, and these would look really sweet set at everyone's place setting around the Thanksgiving table. And again, this one just uses the Velcro dot for the closure. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to make this simple triangle box. If you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe to this YouTube channel and go ahead and click the notification bell, and that way you'll be notified every time I post a video here on the page, which is typically twice a week. You can also find me over on Facebook as The Faithful Stamper. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care. Happy crafting.